Hey, KDO.
Are you talking to me, Michelle?
I am talking to you. During my lesson, my students' eyes were totally glazed over. I'm struggling to teach like a pirate.
I like glaze. Can I bring some donuts?
Yes, I would prefer the chocolate-filled kind, please.
All right, where can I park my ship?
Ha, ha, ha. Help me. Welcome to Across the Hall, a podcast sharing ELA strategies from one door away, with your host, Cade Summers and Michelle Shelton. This is Episode 8, Pirate Pedagogy. Hey, y'all.
Hey, guys.
So today we are going to be talking about engagement. If there's anything that I've ever heard teachers complain about, it's students not doing what it is that they're asking them to do. Students who are bored, their eyes gloss over, and they are just not getting into the lesson. It is a problem. Motivation is a problem. So today we decided we would focus on engagement, getting students to do what it is that we're asking them to do and to learn what we want them to learn and how to go about doing that.
So we've got Dave Burgess from Teach Like a Pirate. I say from, the author of Teach Like a Pirate, but the reason why one might say from is because Teach Like a Pirate is just a little bit everywhere, isn't it?
Yes, it's pretty much as soon as I entered the Twitterverse last year, when Mr. Harmon introduced me to using Twitter for PD, I was...
Hey, whoa. Who's Mr. Harmon?
Oh, I'm sorry. Our principal, my boss.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
The awesome man who gives me a job. But anyway, so as soon as I entered that Twitterverse, I was introduced to Dave Burgess and Teach Like a Pirate, #TLAP, and also just many of the other books that he publishes. And his name is just everywhere, and pirate is everywhere. So it is such an honor to be able to have him on the show today that he granted us this interview, and I fangirled just a little bit whenever he actually answered me. And it's become this weird thing where these educators and people who promote wonderful educational practices have become my celebrities, I guess. And it's just a different experience than my New Kids on the Block days.
The New Kids on the Block reference. Nice job. I would definitely not have come up with that. So the second part of our episode today is going to be with me and Michelle giving you guys some examples of hooks based on the 30-plus hooks he references in this episode, and also those which you can find in his book, Teach Like a Pirate. So we decided to just come up with several hooks based on the texts and skills that we are teaching throughout the year in our 9th and 10th grade classes. I even include, I think, some Macbeth in there, and that's just from some background in previous years where I've taught 12th grade.
So one of the things that we wanted to do when we first created this podcast was to make sure that whenever you are introduced to a new strategy or tips, that we give you some very practical next day advice on how you could use that in your classroom, specifically in the ELA classroom. But we also have found that many social studies teachers and elementary school teachers can use these things as well.
Yeah, I was about to pause for just a second because, we are roughly 4 minutes into the podcast and we wanted you not to turn it off because ELA, that's not me. I teach industrial arts. Is that taught anymore?
I don't think so.
I had an industrial arts teacher in middle school. Oh, well, career tech. I'm an engineering teacher or some other STEM field type teacher. And I'm pretty sure that even in all of those classes, you also can benefit from your kids not having their heads down on their desk asleep, nor wandering around the room aimlessly like lost sheep, or picking their noses and putting the boogers on the ceilings or whatever it is the case that they might be doing. That is an example of the distractedness of unengaged students. So the last part of our episode today is going to be what, Michelle?
It is #the struggle. And we actually talked to Dave just a little bit about #the struggle during the interview, and then we'll revisit that as we get to our normal third segment there at the end.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started.
Let's get started. Today, we are so excited that we have Dave Burgess, author of Teach Like a Pirate, with us. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm excited to join you.
I was introduced to Teach Like a Pirate last year, actually on Twitter, and then I did the Ditch conference with Matt Miller and got to see you some that way. And then whenever you came to Alabama in person, I had to be there. So I am so inspired by you and so excited that you're here. We just would like to know first, just tell us a little bit about this pirate thing. Teach Like a Pirate. Why a pirate?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy thing, isn't it? A lot of times people ask me, they'll see my shirt and they'll say, Teach Like a Pirate? What is that about? And I always tell them, hey, it's got nothing to do with a dictionary definition. Like, we don't want teachers to go out and attack and rob ships at sea, right? It's all about the spirit of a pirate. To me, it's about embracing the spirit of a pirate. And the spirit of a pirate is someone who is unconventional, someone who's willing to reject the status quo, someone who's willing to sail into uncharted waters with no guarantee of success, a risk taker, a rebel, a maverick. So it's embracing that spirit of being a pirate. In addition to that, the P-I-R-A-T-E of the word pirate is an acronym. Each one of those letters stands for something in the pirate system. And then also, pirates are known for having hooks. And this is all about how you can hook students with what you do in your classroom to draw them almost magically or magnetically into what you're doing in your rooms. And so that's kind of the three layers of the pirate metaphor.
Awesome. Okay, so talking about these hooks, because I know that is a big part of the book. Whenever I came to your conference, there was something on the screen that got everyone's attention. So how do these hooks work in getting the students engaged?
Absolutely. So there's 30 some odd hooks in the book, and all of them are different. All of them address different parts of the learning experience. And it's sort of like, I look at it as a presentational toolbox. Like, if you do any of these things every day, they lose their impact, right? But these are all ideas that you can throw and build a larger presentational toolbox in order to engage kids. And so it's incorporation of art and music and movement and costuming and interior design. And I always tell people, like, hey, you're the set designer, you're the choreographer, you're the director, you're the producer, you're the light tech of your show. And so you need to control all these elements of your environment to create the most immersive experience for kids in the most powerful learning environment that you possibly can. And so that's a big part of the Teach Like a Pirate system, is using these hooks not just to teach a lesson, but to create an experience. You can see, lessons are easily forgotten, right? But experiences live forever. Like, they may forget some of that prohibition lecture that you gave, but they'll never forget going to the speakeasy. So it's taking the content that we teach and creating an experience for us. So here's my content, not good enough. How do I make this come alive? How do I make this memorable? How do I create an experience around this?
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, so some of those that I really liked deal with the idea of incorporating crafts and incorporating dance, just making class a lot more fun. I would love for you to just describe a few of those, if you don't mind, whether it's some of the ones I just said or some of your favorite hooks. And then I do have kind of a follow-up question, but I'm really interested in hearing a few of those for anyone who's not familiar with them.
Yeah, so here's the problem. There's a phrase that's used all the time in education. You probably heard it used. People say it with a really serious face when they say it. And it sounds like this: literacy is not the English teacher's job. Literacy is everyone's job, right? And you've probably heard that. Well, so here's the thing.
Right.
I agree with that. I actually agree with that. But this is the Teach Like a Pirate corollary to that. That's true for every subject, not just literacy. It's true of math and science and social studies and art and music. Like, things like art and music, that's not just something for kids to do over when they're in this part of the building over here. Things like art and music, technology, when they're woven throughout the curriculum, that's part of what brings school alive for kids and helps them process things in different ways and develop a creative spirit. Now, things like art and music, they're not measured on your state test probably, right? But you know where they're measured? They're measured in life, with a richer and more fulfilled life. And it adds that richness to stuff that helps kids process things and to learn it. And so when you incorporate more art and music in your lesson and these things that are fun, then you're going to have to spend less time reteaching because you created a more powerful experience the first time, less time in review, less time, all that time you're going to save. And so people are worried about the extra time of teaching like a pirate. It's not going to cost you time. It's going to save you time in the long run because you're going to create something that they have great retention of.
Yeah, I definitely find that to be the case in my classroom. Some of the times when it's dry and boring, which I try to avoid as much as possible, but those moments are the moments that they forget, the moments when we come to a point of assessment, when we're wanting to go back and see how well they know something or how well they can do something, they forget those things. So your point, I definitely understand that. And I've, in my own experiences in trying to practice the things that you teach, have found the great benefit of the lasting memory of the experience that you describe. What is your approach to trying to balance the fun with the productive action?
Yeah, so some people they'll tell me that, you know what, I have a real problem in my classroom, and the problem is that I've incorporated some of your ideas, and I get the kids so wound up and excited that then I can't bring them back down in order to teach my content. And one of the things I always tell them is, what a wonderful problem to have, where your problem is that you have kids so pumped up to be there and so wound up to be at school that you're having trouble bringing them down, as opposed to what many teachers' problem is, where they have kids falling asleep in their desk or texting on their phone because they're bored out of their minds by what's happening in school. And so I'd rather err on that side than err on the other side. But it's also, it's an art. And so there's a science of teaching art, and the art is to know how far you can take them, how excited you can get them, how much transitional time you have to leave in between, and how to incorporate rituals to bring them back into the learning. But people that are concerned about whether or not, now there's an R word, like, you know how some people say never say the F word? Well, there's an R word that I feel the same about, and the R word is rigor. And look up the definition of that word sometime in the dictionary and see if that's what you want to describe your class. And I always tell people, it doesn't matter what you say if nobody's listening.
Oh, that's true.
And so it always goes back to engagement. And so people are saying like, well, but this is going to take 10 extra minutes if I add this hook here and do all kind of stuff like this. Like, well, you know what? But then you're going to gain time because they're going to be engaged. They're going to be with you. So it doesn't matter what you say if nobody's listening. You can teach all you want, but if they're not listening to you, then it doesn't matter. And so another thing that kind of ties into this is people will say, you know what? I don't think you're preparing them for the real world. Because they're going to get to college and their professor isn't going to care whether they're engaged and having fun. And their boss, when they get to work, isn't going to say, hey, are you having fun today? And all that kind of stuff. And what a horrible argument that is. That's like saying, hey, you know what? Life is going to suck for you later. and to get you ready for it, we're going to make sure it sucks for you now too.
We're really looking college and career ready with it.
That's no argument for creating a teacher. Yeah.
I don't
buy that argument at all.
I've heard teachers say that a lot. Quite often they say that. So I know that the P stands for passion, right? So what about these teachers who say, well, I don't really have any passions. I don't really know anything that I know about that I can bring into the classroom that would get my students engaged. How can I encourage those teachers to get passionate about what they're doing?
Yeah, so they're wrong. And so everyone's passionate about certain things. And so that's why I broke passion into 3 categories. And this was because of a problem I was having. And that I was not a history major. And I'm not a person that goes home from school and watches the History Channel and reads history books and historical fiction for fun and all that. That's not who I am, right? And so I was a person that came to it late in the game. And so there was a lot of my content that, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't that into. So how am I going to come here and be passionate in front of my kids? And so, because what I always tell people is like, don't expect people to be passionate about stuff that you're not passionate about. Like a teacher will come to me and say, I just don't understand what's happening. Kids just don't seem excited about school. And I'll go, yeah, I just can't imagine why they're not excited in your class. Look at you, you're just a fireball. And so there's 3 categories of passion. One of them is your content. What is it in your content area that you're passionate about, that you're on fire about, that you're excited to teach? But then there's 2 other areas that we can all get passionate about. One of them is your professional passions. So what is it about the profession of education outside of your subject matter that you're passionate about. And these are things like developing lifelong learners and having kids leave class with a larger vision of what they're capable of than when they walked in, and embedding character development and character building into all the things that we teach. And if you can't get passionate about stuff like that, then you do need to choose another profession, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's those professional passions. And then the third category is your personal passions. What is it completely outside of your profession that you're passionate about, and trying to draw those in as well, because that's not only does it make you a more powerful educator because you're presenting more often from a place of passion, you're more fulfilled as an educator, but then also is you're developing rapport and relationships with kids because you're sharing some of yourself as a part of what you do in your classroom. And so that's an important part of it also. When you can combine all three layers of that passion together, that's when you become really uncompromising and relentless in that pursuit of excellence and greatness. And you become that passion monster in your classroom.
Right. I mean, I don't guess I'm having any more fun than whenever I'm pulling in Broadway tunes. And as boring as that might be on the surface for my ninth graders, they actually end up really liking it because they see how excited I am.
Yeah. Do you sing for them?
Yes, I do sing for them. Occasionally I dance. It's not pretty.
Okay, so let's talk about that. And you know, Cade, you mentioned the dancing and all that too. So let's talk about this for a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about singing and dancing in class. I'm for it. I'm a huge proponent of it. Okay, but before someone says, no, you don't understand, I can't sing. Let me just tell you something. If you can't sing, that's way better. That's way better. That's not an excuse not to do it. That's a reason to do it. Right? If you can dance in your classroom and you dance, whatever. If you can't dance and you dance in your classroom, that's so much more engaging for a kid. So I don't buy into this. And people say, well, I'm not the kind of person that's the personality that would dress up for my students. Mm-hmm. And then immediately what I tell them is, well, then it would have way more impact when you do it.
Exactly.
So when I dress up, it's just another crazy thing that Mr. Burgess does, right? But if it's totally out of your character to dress up and you dress up, it's going to have monster impact in your classroom. And it might be a little bit uncomfortable for you, but you know what? All progress is found outside of your comfort zone. And so if you're never willing to be uncomfortable, then you're not growing as an educator. And so sometimes these things are going to be outside of your comfort zone. You have to push through that. We tell kids to do that all the time, don't we?
Absolutely.
We say you got to have a growth mindset. Like a kid says, like, I'm not good at math. And you say, like, no, you're not good at math yet. Or, you know, I don't feel comfortable speaking in front of the class. Do we say, oh, well, okay, then you never have to speak in front of the class this year. Never mind. Just go back to your seat. No. We have to develop that growth mindset. We give them the skill and the confidence to be able to do it over the course of the year. Right.
Right.
And so, but then we have to direct that same focus towards ourselves, where you'll see people say, well, I'm not comfortable using technology, so I'm not going to use it in my class. Well, what do you mean by that? Like, so you don't have a growth mindset? You can't learn how to use it? We want our kids to have that mindset, so let's have that mindset too.
Right. Okay. And so the I is immersion. Explain what immersion means as it relates to the classroom and engagement. As
opposed to what it means to becoming a better lover, you mean? No, they have to go to the workshop.
You're killing me, Dave. You're killing me.
Yeah. They have to go to the workshop for that part.
Yes, they do.
So anyway, the immersion is this, and that when you're in the presence of someone who is fully immersed in the moment with you, and every cell, fiber, piece of their soul is immersed and committed to that unfolding moment with you, it's almost magical in nature. Right. It has a magnetic pull to it. It has a hypnotic quality, actually. How can you look away from someone who is totally immersed with you? It's almost overwhelming when someone's that immersed. And so we can use that to draw kids into what we're doing in class. And so that immersion in the classroom is it's not just in the classroom. It's as a parent, and in life in general, it's a game changer.
Right, and I just remembered the hook you had on the board that we'll save for the people who go to hear you speak. So R,
tell us a little bit about what rapport means.
Yeah, so there's lots of reasons why you want to build rapport. It's the center of the word. It's the heart of the word pirate, the R, and it's the heart of teaching, building rapport and relationships with kids. And so it always comes back to that. I invest time on the front end to build a psychologically safe environment for my students, in a place where they're comfortable and feel safe, supported, and willing to take a risk and do some things that are a little outside of their comfort zone and a little bit scary for them. And so when you create that psychologically safe environment for kids, then it might be an investment on the front end, but it's going to pay dividends for the whole rest of the year. And so that's the section where I talk about like my first 3 days of school and how I develop that environment, and just in general how we create that place for kids where they're desperate, knocking down the walls to be. And if you think about what do you want a kid to say about your class at the end of the word, like if they could only choose 5 words to describe your class, what would you want them to say at the end of the year? And like, what if a kid said something like safe? They only got 5 words, but they chose a word like safe. Maybe the only place in their life, but in your classroom they felt safe. That's a powerful thing, right? Or family.
Yes.
And so building rapport with kids, it helps you. There's 3 reasons why you do it. One of them is because it gives you the information to create powerful hooks. Like, how are you going to know how to engage your kids if you don't know your kids?
Absolutely.
And so I want to know what my kids are into. I want to know what music they listen to. I want to know what television shows they watch. I want to know what movie they're excited about that's coming out this weekend. I want to know what their extracurricular hobbies and interests are, because that's all ammunition I can use to connect with them and to tie my content to as well. And so that's one reason. The second reason is that it allows you to create buy-in. You have to have buy-in with your kids. If you're going to have some wild and crazy stuff doing and coming down in your room, you got to have some buy-in with them. And so rapport allows you to create that buy-in, especially with 2 groups of kids. 1, the introverted, shy kids, and 2, the kids that are too cool for school. You have to have buy-in. And then the third reason is it allows you to develop relationships of influence. That's why I got into teaching. I didn't get into teaching to teach them about the railroads. Right? I got into teaching to create a relationship of influence with young people. And so, but this is the problem. We don't get to choose who we have an influence over. They get to choose whether they're going to see us as the kind of person that they're going to allow that position in their life. They get to choose whether they're going to see us as a role model in their life. And so building rapport and relationships with kids is one of the most powerful ways that you can make sure that does happen.
Absolutely.
So I know the A is to ask and analyze, but what you just said made me think a little bit about what I've tried to accomplish at the beginning of the year, trying to build rapport. I can always do better at that, but it also connects with the asking and analyzing part. I was just thinking today, we've had a lot of fun in my class and we've learned a lot along the way. But then there are those days where I just feel like I feel like I've got to get back to some nuts and bolts of my curriculum. I feel like sometimes I don't integrate it well enough. And so that's where one of my struggles is. You have a section about failure and feedback. And as I was sitting with a couple of students today trying to offer feedback, I found myself almost, I'm trying to get into proficiency and mastery, looking at a standards-based grading system as opposed to just the traditional grading system. And as I'm trying to explain proficient and you're not there yet, I found myself almost settling for a negative perspective on proficiency. And I just thought about this interview today and thought about that section. And I just want to know, how do you handle the failure versus feedback part of the A?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Sometimes I'll have a teacher and they'll come to me and they'll say, you know what? Like, my classroom is disaster. I'm ready. I'm going to quit. I'm just not cut out for this. And they'll just be in total despair. And I'll say, all right, well, tell me what happened. And they'll tell me what happened. And it turns out what happened is maybe they had a lesson where, let's say they have 30 kids. 29 of those kids were engaged in the lesson. But one kid over in the corner popped off and said something rude or was distracted or disrupted the lesson. And they'll walk away from that experience feeling like they're a total failure. And that life isn't 100% or fail. And neither is teaching. And so this is not about creating some nirvana level of perfection in our lessons. This is about getting better. It's about improving. It's about iteration after iteration, which gets better and better and better. And so everything that happens in the classroom is feedback. It's not failure. Turn failure into feedback. And so don't personalize it. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't beat kids up about it. It's all feedback. Everything that happens in the classroom is feedback. They're providing you the real-time gift of feedback to help you improve and hone your craft. And so you use that feedback to make shifts in courses and adjustments to get to where you need to go. Pirates trim their sails based on the wind, right? They're watching the currents, and they're watching the wind, and they have a compass, and they trim their sails accordingly to that wind, right? So you don't see them arguing with the wind. They don't fight with the wind. They don't get mad at the wind. Say like, the wind changed. I guess we're just done with this journey. Forget it. Let's just go home. No, they shift their sails. They catch the wind, and they keep going. And that's how we have to look at the things that happen in our classroom. It's all feedback. It's all wind. How you're going to shift your sails and catch that wind and keep going and reach your destination.
So one of the things that I have experienced that has been concerning to me and has gotten to me, and I've taken it to personally, is as I've gotten outside the box and started teaching differently and making things more student-centered, I've had students who I've overheard say, she doesn't teach. And that is a smack in the face whenever you've really just prepared something ahead of time and prepared these experiences, but they're used to teaching looking a certain way. So how can other teachers who may have heard that same kind of comment from students feel a little bit better about themselves?
Yeah, so most often I hear that same question, but it's not students who say it, it's other teachers.
Well, that too. Yeah. Yes.
And so I'm gonna go off the rails just for a second and tell you a little story, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, so here we go. I have a lesson on the Berlin airlift, and it's got a lot of stuff about that area of the Cold War, but the centerpiece of the new information is on the Berlin airlift. Now, at the end of that lesson, I'm going to have them create some sort of flying device. They're going to create like paper airplanes, things like this. And I have a whole area of the room where they're going to try to fly and reach their plane into West Berlin to deliver supplies. And if it goes outside of West Berlin, I'm saying, oh no, communist territory. No, we have to get those supplies to West Berlin. And so I'm reinforcing so the kids quickly make their planes and they're having fun. They get around people that know how to who knows how to make a plane. And so they get around the experts in the room that know stuff. They're learning from each other. They're creating this hands-on thing, which is fun. And they're all lining up and we're flying and trying to get supplies into West Berlin. And then before the bell rings, by the way, and I'm reinforcing the content the whole time as we're talking about the communist territory and where they need to get and all that and why it's important. And then as before the bell rings, we go outside and there's a little grass bank that leads down from my classroom, and we fly for distance. And the furthest three planes I'm gonna give some sort of like prize to. And if their plane isn't one of the furthest three, you see them racing down the hill, grabbing their plane, racing back up and trying to become, and they're throwing the plane over and over again, trying to become the furthest three planes. And now the bell rings, and they head off to their next class, holding their planes. Well, the first thing that's gonna happen is they're gonna run into their peers in the hallway. And their friend is going to say, hey, what's up with the plane? And then and my student's going to say, oh, we were learning about the Berlin airlift in class today. And that other kid's going to say, you got to be kidding me. We just did 3 worksheets on the Berlin airlift. And then my student will say, yeah, I know, because my teacher takes the extra worksheets from your teacher and we make planes out of them. Right? And then they're going to get to their next class. And maybe, now I don't know if you're aware of this, but did you know that sometimes 16 or 17-year-old kids don't make the best decisions?
No, really?
and so maybe a kid flies a plane in the next class and gets in trouble. Or maybe a group of my kids just walk in with their planes. And then the teacher says, what's up with those planes? Now, does the kid say, well, Mr. Burgess gave a 45-minute lecture on the Berlin airlift and then added a kinesthetic activity with a hands-on art and craft project that all the while reinforced his content and made a learning experience that was so powerful that I'll never forget it, and I can't wait to get back in class tomorrow to see what we're going to learn next?
Not at all.
Is that what the kid says, or does the kid say, because we were flying planes in Burgess's class? That's what the kid says, right? And so it's not unnatural for that teacher then to think, oh, well, it would be easy to be popular and win awards and all that kind of stuff. Like he's just over there like doing magic tricks and building paper airplanes all day, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. So part of it is a matter of ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in a bad way, like they're stupid. I mean ignorance in just that they don't know.
Right.
What your class is about. And those kids don't know maybe that these instructional strategies are specially designed for them to succeed. And that and that's why like my third day of school is called the method to the madness. Why I explain to the kids, this class is going to be different than anything you've ever seen before. And here's why. Here's the brain research behind this and why it works. You're going to learn more than ever before in the history of your educational experience, and you're going to do it in a faster fashion. And I tell them, so I'm actually giving them the philosophy behind what I'm doing on that third day of school. But then that teacher, now we work in a weird profession. I've worked with some teachers for 15 years and never once seen them teach a lesson, and they've never seen me teach a lesson. Because we teach at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing that happens, though, is that they might be struggling with their class, and they might not feel good about the fact that kids come in excited about your class. Now here, this is going to be a painful statement to say, mm-hmm. but it's going to ring true. If you create a class that is wildly and outrageously successful and popular with kids, that's not going to make everybody on your campus happy. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. And they're going to seek reasons for why kids like your class and not their class, and they're not likely to be self-reflective and empowering reasons. Gotcha. They're likely to be more judgmental reasons.
What would you suggest if we are trying to not only make that kind of significant impact upon our kids, what would you suggest as ways for us to collegially impact the faculty around us with that same sort of enthusiasm and spirit?
Yeah, so part of it is modeling what you want to see. Part of it is exposure to it, right? Is offering them exposure to it. But then, when I look at cultural change on a campus, what I talk about is building a snowball. And so here's how I look at this. If you want to change the culture on your school's campus, you need to look at it like this. If you wanted to build a giant snowball and you went out into the snow and you tried to grab it all up into your arms at the same time, what would happen?
It's going to crumble. It's going everywhere.
It would crumble away and you would be left with nothing. Mm-hmm. That's not the way that you build a snowball. The way that you build a snowball is you get a little bit in your hands and you shape it and you mold it and you work with it and you pack it tight. And then when that's shaped and molded, you add a little bit more and then a little bit more. And eventually it gets big enough where you can actually put it on the ground and roll it and the snow will all stick to it and you can build a giant, huge snowball. That's the only way to build a giant snowball. And it's the only way to change culture on a campus too. Change cannot be announced from the podium, okay? Change is something that's built at a grassroots level. And so you find that group of people that do want to be a part of something new and innovative and creative, and you work with them. That's your initial little bit in your hands, your snowball, and you work with each other and support each other. And it's the energy that radiates out from that group which starts to attract other people in. People say, hey, I want to know what that is, that stuff that you guys are always talking about. I want to be a part of that. Like your kids are coming out of your class excited. What's happening there? And then you bring them in, you add them to the snowball. And eventually it gets big enough where you can put it down on the ground in your system and you can roll it and the snow starts to stick and you have momentum. But it always starts with that small little group. So don't be concerned about people that won't change. Don't let your energy be dissipated with negativity on your campus. Find where the positivity is, where people are ready to change, work with that group, and then that's the area that's going to grow, and you'll have put all your energy there, and then the others will be drawn in.
I'm sorry, I'm just taking in what you said because I was so excited about what you were saying because it's so very affirming.
It's amazing advice. Amazing advice.
It is really good advice. Okay, so T, transformation, which is a powerful word in and of itself. So what is that in the pirate mentality?
Yeah, so this is all about how I want to transform school for my students. I want to transform what they believe is possible in their life, right? And so it's about all the things that you can do to control this how they look at school, how they look at your content, and how you can transform your lessons into these experiences that have them knocking down the walls to get in. And so in this section, it has the 2 essential questions of Teach Like a Pirate. And one of those questions is, do I have any lessons I could sell tickets for?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bar raising question, right? It's, hey, we're not trying to design lessons that just eliminate behavior management issues. We're trying to design lessons that have kids running to get into school instead of running to get out.
Right.
And so, do you have any ticket lessons? Do you have any lessons if there was a cash register at the door and they had to drop some money in to come in? Do you have any where they would come in still? And so I'm trying to create as many ticket lessons as I can. And then the other question, and it's actually the essential question of Teach Like a Pirate. So, and it's this: if they didn't have to be there, would you be teaching to an empty room? Like if your class was optional, if school was just optional, if they didn't have to be there, would you be teaching to an empty room?
Whew.
Or is there something about you that would draw them there anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And those are the teachers that we want to be. And so that's the central part of the transformation chapter of Teach Like a Pirate.
Those are hard questions. Those hurt just a little bit.
Just take it as rhetorical. Take it as rhetorical right now, Michelle. You have time. Yeah. You have time before you're tested.
Okay.
Yeah, those are soul searching questions.
Right.
They are.
So the last letter in Pirate is E, enthusiasm, and you have it all over you. So just go ahead and talk to us about enthusiasm.
Yeah. So it starts with a quote from Carlos Santana, and it says, "Enthusiasm is the most contagious thing in the world. The songs become incidental. What people receive is your joy." And that's the way I look at teaching, is that the lessons become incidental, and what kids receive is our joy. And they're drawn in. It's contagious. When you're around someone who's enthusiastic, you want to be around them more often, that they bring you up. And so it's about how you can bring that enthusiasm every day. And the simple fact of the matter is that you won't always feel enthusiastic. Right. So how can you do it anyway? And so there's 2 different ways you can control your state that I talk about in that. And one is by what you focus on. One is your mind. What you focus on creates your reality. Mm. And so by changing what you focus on, you can change your state. And then the other thing is your physiology, is that a short circuit path to changing your state. This is something I learned from reading Tony Robbins. And that is that a short circuit path to changing your state is to change your physiology. Like if you want to be a more dynamic speaker, then speak in a more dynamic way. If you want to be more enthusiastic, then act more enthusiastic. Right? So, and it seems simplistic, but it's true. And when you act enthusiastic, there's this strange loop that connects, and you actually become more enthusiastic. And so your physiology changes your state. And this will ring true for you in this way. Have you ever been in that spot where maybe it's the afternoon, you've come home from school, you're sitting down, you have the remote in your hand, and your eyes become so heavy that you can't even possibly keep them open. Like you feel like they weigh like 100 pounds each, your eyelids. And maybe you've dozed off a couple of times and you dropped the remote out of your hand, and you just can't imagine doing anything else but sleep in that moment.
Oh yeah.
And then your cell phone rings and you pick it up and you realize, oh my God, I forgot to pick up my kids, or something like that happens, right? Mm-hmm. In a split second, you can go from a state where you could not imagine doing anything but sleep to a state where you can't imagine possibly going to sleep because of what you just heard. Mm-hmm. The only thing that happened, the only thing that changed was in your mind. The mind is powerful. And so we have to learn to use it in powerful ways to control our state and our emotions.
Wow. Yeah.
That's really amazing. We just my students just recently read in a text, "Freedom is a state of mind," looking back at integration of a school in 1957 in Arkansas. And that just totally relates. So much of this I'm going to be sharing directly with them. I don't know about you, Michelle. I'm really excited just to kind of, hey kids, let's sit down today and listen to stand, walk around, play music, whatever, while Dave Burgess teaches us a few lessons about a successful classroom.
Right. So part 2 of your book is crafting engaging lessons. And I know that some teachers would be really overwhelmed with thinking about this pirate mentality, but this is where kind of rubber meets the road. You got to actually sit down and choose your lesson. What are you going to do? So what does that look like for them?
Yeah, so this is where, this is the real practical part of the book. This is the book where when teachers come up at a workshop and they have me sign their book. This is the part that's tabbed, highlighted, bookmarked. And this is where there's a whole, there's 170 of the kind of questions I ask about lessons are all right there, bolted off with pirate coins in the center of the book under 30 different categories of hook. And so this is where you just take that lesson, maybe even that you're already teaching, and you can go there and ramp it up and kick it up that little extra notch and make it a more transformative experience for your kids. And so it's that whole toolbox mentality. And it comes in the form of questions because, again, I think questions are the key to creativity. Like if you want to change a teacher's classroom, change their questions. If you change the questions that they ask about their lesson design, you can change their whole class. And so I don't want to just tell you all the stuff that I do. I want to give you the question that brought me to that spot, so that you can ask that question about your curriculum and you can design something for your classroom. Like I know you have mainly an ELA audience. And so because I'm a U.S. history teacher, that doesn't mean this isn't going to be for you. Those questions are for any content area, any grade level. And so that's a real super critical part of the book. I'm trying to hit, like when I'm speaking and when I was writing, I try to hit a 50-50 split. Like if you see me do a keynote, 50% of the time, I'm trying to pump you up. I'm trying to get you ready to knock down a wall. Maybe you think you're listening to like a Zig Ziglar motivational speech or like a Southern Baptist preacher. Okay?
Yes.
Right? And 50% of the time, I'm actually literally modeling and demonstrating the engagement strategy as if the audience are the students of my class. And so I want there to be that practical component and that inspirational component. So you won't do the practical stuff if you're not fired up, but if you get fired up and you don't know what to do, that's no good either. And so you have to have both. And so that's why that center section of the book is super important.
Okay. So after I listened to your keynote this summer, I actually sent you a message on Twitter and said, okay, Dave, how in the world do you keep up this kind of energy on a daily basis? And because I know that that's what a lot of people probably say to you, right?
Yeah, so I've often thought that if at the end of my program, if instead of just having books there at the table, I had a little bottle that said like pirate energy, I could probably make a whole lot of money.
You'd make a lot of money.
Yeah, but anyway, but it goes back to that enthusiasm chapter. It's about controlling your state. And it's that focus, the physiology and what you focus on. And so I would also tell you that like if you see me do a keynote, I'm doing a show, right? I'm putting on a show for you. Right. And if you were to walk in my classroom on any given moment, I'm not doing a somersault and double flip and landing in the splits, right? I'm not swinging from a chandelier all the time. And so I'm hand-picking some things from my keynote that are going to demonstrate some of my strategies and points. But I'm also going to have time where kids are collaborating and working together. I'm going to have times where they're working on a project or they're reviewing or whatever it might be. And so maybe you get a little bit of a stilted view of my classroom if you just come to the keynote. And in fact, this is what I often tell people too. It wouldn't even be appropriate for me to be like that all the time in my classroom, because that would be me on stage all the time. And there needs to be time where kids are owning their own learning. So it's not something where you're going to, at the start of the day, you're going to start, your full cardio teaching workout and not finish until 6 hours later.
Right. So one of the segments that we have on our podcast is called #TheStruggle. And normally, Cade and I are just talking about that, but there was something in particular that he wanted to ask.
As I was looking at your book, one of the things that I thought was left with little mention, but probably I infer is probably everything to you, countless pages more than what is included in the book, is in your acknowledgement section. So the section about your family and the impact that your family has on you. And so I was just thinking about, in those acknowledgments, my own personal life. In my fourth year teaching, I struggle with balance. So, in my life, I need more time spent with my family, my wife, my kids, and more time doing things with them than going home and being stuck in the professional rut. I know you appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about how you make it, and feel free to describe any of that is meaningful to you.
Yeah. So, you should probably ask my wife whether or not I'm good at that or not.
Yeah. Don't ask mine.
Yeah. So balance is a tough thing. Here's the thing. We work on a job where we can never be done. That's dangerous. It's dangerous. We can never be done. Like, when was the last time you heard a teacher say, I've actually got everything all set for the next few weeks?
Oh, no.
Never, right? Not a good one.
Not a good teacher.
And so there's always something more we can do, and we know how important what we do is, so it makes us feel guilty at time that we spend outside of education. Mm-hmm. But every time I've honored my outside passions and interests, or been willing to develop new ones, it's always come back to inform my teaching. It's always come back to make me a better teacher. And so not only does it create a more balanced human being, which is going to make me better for my kids in the long run, but it also gives me creative ammunition from other areas in my life to bring back into my classroom. And so actually, Teach Like a Pirate is a very strange book. You might not have considered this, but there is not one single educational book referenced inside of it. Not a single one. Not because I don't like education books. I publish them. It's because that's not where it came from. It was from the outside drawn in. It's like my background as a coach has influenced how I give feedback to students, how I break down instruction, and how I deliver hopefully an inspirational component to my class in addition to the content. My background as a marketer and entrepreneur is how I create buzz in anticipation, like how a marketer creates buzz for a new product. I create buzz for my lessons, right? And so I use their sales and marketing techniques to sell content to my kids. And my background as a magician has influenced my sense of staging and showmanship and incorporation of props, okay? And now I know that you've seen me speak. So like my background as a rapper, now, this always makes people laugh, but that's all right. I mean, there were 3 years of my life where you could not have convinced me I was going to be anything but a rapper. You couldn't have convinced me. Right? I was making tapes. All I cared about was getting back in my dorm room with my 2 Technics 1200 turntables, my microphone, my mixer, and my 808 drum machine. And so, but if you see me speak, do you think that my background as an MC has influenced my professional speaking style?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right? I'm a person that's used to speaking in a fast and flourishy way in front of people. Mm-hmm. And so it's influenced my speaking style. All these things have come together to create the best me in the classroom. Teach Like a Pirate is not about you teaching like me, though. It's about taking your strengths, your talents, things that you're into, things that your students are into, and weaving those all together to create the best you. And so the more balanced you are as a human being, the more able you're going to be able to bring stuff from outside into your classroom. And that's going to make you more powerful in the long run anyway.
Thanks for answering that. You've inspired me, and I'm excited to apply it. I'll even talk to my wife about it when I get home.
There you go. Excellent.
Honey, I'm going to be talking about you in class because you're my passion.
There you go.
That could tie back into that I chapter if we wanted it to. But
absolutely. It could.
And it's time to end the show.
Dave, we're so very excited that you have spent this time with us. Thank you so much. I know that you publish so many books. The whole Pirate series is just crazy on Twitter. Everything that I see pretty much has your hand in it. So I know that you're one busy man, and I'm so thankful to you for spending this time with us.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure to join you guys. Thank you so much for inviting me. And as far as the Twitter, it's one of the great places where teachers are connecting. Make sure you get connected. I'm at Burgess Dave there. So my name just flipped around into Burgess Dave. The hashtag people often use is TLAP for Teach Like a Pirate. And it's our complete honor to find these other educators with powerful messages and help them spread their message as well with these other books. And so I never meant Teach Like a Pirate to be the full story. It's my story. Mm-hmm. So now it's fun to find people with to contribute and to grow that story and to take it other directions and other ways. And so it's just our honor to publish all those books.
So for our listeners who may not know what we're talking about, could you just mention a couple of those books that they might like to go and check out?
Yeah, if you're an avid reader of professional development books, maybe some of your favorite books are published right here at this house. We just decided, I was so upset with the traditional publishing world. I always use the phrase, the only thing missing to me was a ski mask and a gun. Mm-hmm. And so we run the publishing business right out of our house here in San Diego. And we publish like The Innovator's Mindset by George Couros, and Kids Deserve It by Adam Welcome and Todd Neslony, Launch by AJ Giuliani and John Spencer, all the pirate books, Play Like a Pirate, Learn Like a Pirate, Explore Like a Pirate, Lead Like a Pirate, and Ditch That Textbook by Matt Miller, all the Alice Keeler books, like all the Google Classroom books and all those things. And there's over 34 books now that we publish. So they all are published right here in our house in San Diego.
That is crazy. And that is so awesome and inspiring. Thank you so much for being here.
It was absolutely my pleasure.
Wow. So Dave was great as always. Like I mentioned before, this is now the third time that I have heard him speak. He is so empowering and encouraging, and there's just so much truth in what he has to say.
You know what I really like, Michelle? I really like that every time he talked, he was really pumped up.
You just scared me.
And I felt really pumped up. I like what he said about getting motivated and how that he tries to model 50% excitement and 50% content.
After I went to his keynote, I actually came home and I spoke to my friend who was with me, and we were both just so overwhelmed. So like, how in the world does he keep up that kind of energy and that kind of motivation? And I came home and I sent him a message on Twitter and asked him that question. And he said basically what he said to us in the interview. I was putting on a show. I picked out the moments that I used throughout the course of the year and put those all together. So it's not like you're going to be doing this all the time every day.
So his talking like this is, to me, what he was trying to say when he told us that we're basically bad singers, and that when teachers sing badly, that it has that much more of an impact on students' engagement.
Right.
You sing badly, you dance badly, you act badly. Basically, students love it.
Yeah, they do. And you can't.
And that's not to say he's a bad actor, but it is to say that immediately he had that kind of super excitement that I really didn't care how he acted, that I was paying attention to exactly what he had to say.
You can't take your eyes away from him. We were, obviously interviewing him via Zoom, so we were able to see him, and you just can't take your eyes off of him because he does have so much enthusiasm, and he's able to muster that up.
Hey, and on a side note, he came prepared for our Zoom meeting. In other words, we did this by video, and he's totally cool with us putting it online, and so we're going to put it on our YouTube channel as well.
Feel free to check it out.
And on our website at
Don't judge my outfit.
acrossthehallpodcast.com, because he came pirate costume with the flag and all.
And I said, don't judge my outfit because it was homecoming week and it was a cowboy day or something. I had on plaid. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Forgot about that.
Sorry, guys. I don't wear that every day.
There were several things that we loved about that, obviously, and we can't cover all of them at this time, but I want to go through just a couple. And I know, Michelle, you've got some also that you want to just highlight before we get into some of the hooks that we have prepared for you. And so we'll get into that here in just a second. But one of the things that I liked him describing was that teachers fail, and that when we fail, we use that failure as feedback. And it's the same thing as when the students fail. We should teach them, and even model it for them when we do, teach them not to give up at the point of failure or making mistakes, but instead to use failure to guide their ship, so to speak. And he used that pirate metaphor of, the sails being up, and you adjust your sails by the feedback, by the changing winds, and by the mistakes that you've made or whatever. So I thought that one was pretty good.
Yeah, another thing that I really appreciated that he said was when he quoted Carlos Santana, and then he said that lessons become incidental. What students receive is our joy. And I find that to be so true because I've had this experience lately over the past couple of years where students will just come into my room and just say, why are you happy all the time? You're so happy all the time. Or I love coming in here because you're always so happy. And, I think, just my job change has made me so happy, and the students notice that, and they've put it in my evaluations, and it's something that they do. And sometimes I'll see them come in my room and almost exhale, like, I'm in Miss Shelton's class. I'm okay now. And that's such a positive feeling. And so I just really like that about the joy, because I think that that's true. I think they really do. They zero in on that.
That connects to something else that I really liked, was when he asked if we sold tickets for students to come to our classroom, would anybody come? He also said if students chose 5 words to describe our class at the end of the year, what words would we want them to say? And it's too seldom that teachers actually put themselves in the shoes of their students, who have to sit, not the shoes, but, the students have to sit in a chair or someplace in the classroom, and every single day or every other day, depending on your schedule format, they have to listen to you and they have to participate in your activities. And if they are 100% boring and 100% disconnected from students' wants and needs and interests, then we're not going to get the response, say, at the end of the year, nor if we were actually selling tickets would we get the response that we would want in them wanting to be in our classroom and not somewhere else.
Right. Whenever I heard him ask that question about the tickets, or, if school were optional, would you be teaching to an empty room? That is is convicting, because I think I would be teaching to an empty room. Even as much as I try to make my class engaging, I do feel like that if I were to ask my students that question, they would say, yeah, sorry, Miss Shelton, we see you. That's a hard question to ask yourself.
Your students get to go make videos and use green screens and build cities and utopias and all that kind of fun stuff. So you're changing, Shelton, you're changing.
I'm doing the best that I can.
So I think this is one of the greatest things about our podcast, is not your benefit. Unfortunately, it's been our benefit. But we hope that it's equally benefiting you guys out there, and that you find some value in our guests and in some of the areas that we're exploring as well. Experimenting with, just as you do as teachers, failing and succeeding is a continual progression, I think, in what we do.
And speaking of change, he said change cannot be announced from the podium. Change has to be built from the grassroots level. And I thought that was such a powerful statement, because we as teachers are the ones who have to bring about the change, with the support, obviously, from the person at the podium. We need to feel like somebody is there to support us who's actually in charge of our job. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if teachers don't get on board, even in that small group, he talked about the snowball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he said some things about, starting out with your snowball, you've got to start out with people just like you. If you are trying to be positive, then put yourself around other people who have like positivity. And then once that little core has built each other up, then find someone else to get into the core. And hopefully people who have that same mindset are seeking you out, and you're seeking them out, and it just becomes, as you just described and as he put in that metaphor, it becomes a snowball where the whole school culture changes within your school. And that is such a great feeling, because you no longer feel like the black sheep of the school just by trying things that are against the grain, or trying new innovative ideas. It's a good feeling to know that you've impacted other people, and that they're also wanting to be more like what you're trying to be like, not being like you, but what you're trying to be like. That's something else David said. He doesn't want us to act like him. He wants us to find there were 3 passions he described, and one of those passions included your own personal passions. What do you care about? And incorporate that into your classroom. So he doesn't say be like him. Being a pirate is about finding your own passion that you care about, that drives you on a daily basis, to where you don't dread going to work, teaching your kids, and trying to direct them for their entire lives. If you are passionate about those things, then you'll inspire their passion, and you all help one another.
Right. And it's so important for you to find those people who are positive, and then to try to bring other people into that positive fold, because he absolutely was speaking truth when he said that if you create a class that the students love, if the students love you and they're having fun and they're learning, other people on campus aren't going to like that, and they're going to try to find reasons why what you're doing is bad, how you're doing something wrong. And that is can be so discouraging. But if you look at that through the lens that he gave us, I think that you can find motivation and encouragement.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think we get way too distracted in life, not just in our professions, but in life, worrying about the people who are going to say something negative about us,
right?
And less time actually focusing on what good can we accomplish and who are we trying to do that good for. So every episode, I don't know if you've noticed, faithful listeners, but every episode we start out in the first 15 to 30 seconds with our own style of hook. Usually it's Michelle's or my goofiness related to any number of things where we pretend we're across the hall for the podcast. But those hooks are intended to get you guys interested in the content of that episode. We do this as teachers, or ought to be doing this as teachers, every single day, and at varied lengths. Sometimes it can just be a matter of a few seconds, the beginning of a class period. Sometimes a hook can last an entire class period, or maybe even longer than that. So we're going to dig into some hooks now. And Dave, in his book, Teach Like a Pirate, gives somewhere around 33 of them, doesn't he? Michelle?
Something like that. I don't know that I counted, but I think that you did.
Pretty close to it.
So I'm going to trust you on that one.
So on our website, acrossthehallpodcast.com, in our show notes, Michelle and I have placed there some pretty descriptive hook ideas for the ELA classroom. And we're just going to run through a few of those in this podcast just to give you a taste of some of the things we've prepared. So if you happen to see those on Twitter as we try to share them out, feel free to share those with your buddies and your PLN. And hopefully we end up, reaching other folks, and that also we can hear about some of the hooks they've created for their classrooms too, with our hashtag
X the Hall.
X the Hall.
Yeah,
that's the hashtag.
So do you mind if I go first?
No, not at all. Go.
Okay. Well, I first learned about these hooks during the Ditch conference that I referenced in the interview with Matt Miller. And I was immediately inspired and thought, and this was last January, I think, and I was immediately inspired and thought, how can I do something with what I've got coming next? And the things that I had coming next were A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner, and in my 11th grade class. And then also with my freshmen, we were about to read Edgar Allan Poe. So what I came up with for Edgar Allan Poe was I did a hyperdoc, which I also learned about from the Ditch conference, where they had to research serial killers because I was trying to find a way to, get them excited and engaged.
And really scared.
So that's something that I don't think they've ever had to do in school before. They had to research serial killers, and they also
I'd be
had
interested.
They also had to go into. They went on a virtual field trip to the catacombs, and so I think it was very engaging for them. They also found some serial killer stories from locally that creeped them out a little bit, and they were able to talk to people that they know that actually remember those things happening. And then, so that was my freshman. And then with my juniors, with A Rose for Emily, I invited in a mortician. And he was actually a former student from a while back. And I knew that he was a mortician and worked at a funeral home. And I invited him in, and he talked to them about how bodies decay. And so they had to research how bodies decay. And then they had to add to the story of A Rose for Emily, where they descriptively, or very descriptively, talked about what it would have been like for Emily to have slept. I don't want to give away the ending to the people who haven't read it. Your English teachers is fine. Anyway, to Emily as she slept by that corpse for all of that time.
That's
so
sweet.
It was very interesting and disgusting, I might add. But they learned something and they were engaged.
Yeah. This year, at the beginning of the year, I taught Washington Crossing the Delaware. It's a fun text for 10th graders to start with because it's a visual text. It's a painting, a mural-sized painting by Emmanuel Lutz. And then we followed that up with the ekphrastic poem that has the same title, Washington Crossing the Delaware, that was based on, hence ekphrastic, it's based on the painting. And I think it was written within about 80 to 100 years after the painting was painted. So I wish I would have come up with this earlier this year, but it would have been fun. You got Washington standing on a boat in the Delaware River that looks icy. So he's got obstacles of chunks of ice in the midst of the scene. Washington is standing above all the others. The second highest person is, I believe, the flag bearer, but the flag actually extends higher than Washington. It's a great way to analyze imagery, visual imagery in this case, and it's going to be also a way to analyze the visual imagery of the poem too. But I just got to thinking, how could I have made that a little bit more interesting? I could have taken the students somewhere where there was a metaphor, where I could create a metaphorical river. It could be a ditch by a less traveled road on campus. It could be a hallway. It could be lanes even on the track outside of your high school. And you could kind of prearrange some obstacles, whether it's some kind of balls or boxes or students even, or any number of things that you could create as obstacles to like recreate the ice. Maybe even go out there on a rainy day, because it looks like there's some rain clouds off in the distance where Washington is coming from. But it looks like things are a little bit brighter and sunnier the direction that he's headed to. It's part of the theme that it appears Lutz is trying to convey, the optimism of pursuing freedom can be difficult, but it's worthwhile, that sort of thing. And so, have the students decide who can be Washington, who can be the leader of all of those early settlers who are in all the boats surrounding Washington's boat. Who would be the flag bearer? Who can hold the flag out there? And maybe even have someone be Lutz, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Have someone be the original artist of the painting and actually kind of like a director of a scene. Place Washington where he needs to be, place the other settlers where they need to be, and then maybe have the artist, the one who's pretending to be him, actually create all of the obstacles, and then maybe take some pictures of it so that the students can actually end up seeing it and then analyze their own scene of Washington crossing the Delaware and see if it compares in a pretty accurate way to the original.
No, that's a good idea. I had one of my ideas was kind of similar as far as using campus rather than staying in the classroom, and that's when you're teaching the hero's journey. Like, have the different elements of the hero's journey throughout campus and lead them around to go throughout that journey, which is much more memorable than just drawing it on the board. I like that. The spatial awareness and getting the kids up and moving, they just tend to remember those situations. Because we don't really even. I think that the reason that Dave has all of the questions that go along with his hooks is because teachers don't think to ask those questions. To ask yourself, what kind of music could be playing when the students enter the room? Where is the best place to have this lesson? We just assume no music. We just assume in this classroom. So just those questions that force us into making our lessons more creative are very helpful. One of the things that I thought that I wish I had done last year when I taught The Great Gatsby is to get my kids to learn the Foxtrot or the Charleston and then teach it to me. Because how engaging is that to be able to teach your teacher who cannot dance at all how to do something like that? So that would have been something that would have been memorable for them. That would, and I would enjoy that, but be incredibly embarrassed by that too. Because well, I think that's the point. Rhythm and coordination. Ugh. So another one that I like is teaching Shakespeare. I know I just said something that those aren't words that many people utter, but I love teaching Shakespeare, particularly the tragedy of Julius Caesar. And if a teacher were to start with the outcome of that play, I think that students would find that very interesting, intriguing even, where if you were to begin at the scene where the two of the main characters kill themselves, namely Brutus and Cassius, and then set it up so that you tell the students that they had both been involved in the horrendous attack on the newly crowned king, Caesar. And yet Caesar's friend, just a matter of lines later, says that Brutus was the noblest Roman of them all, giving them certain ingredients to the play and piquing that curiosity of, well, how in the world could one of the ones who murdered the king
be considered the noblest of all by his best friend, and then have the students create their own stories of possibly how they think this could have played out. And they can be as far-fetched and fun as they would like, or as serious as they might like. And in the end, it's getting them interested to want to get through each of those earlier 4 acts and actually read through carefully to see how close their prediction was of the plot. And I think that would be one way of, overcoming the labor that it often is to get through several acts of a Shakespearean tragedy. Absolutely.
I've done some things with Shakespeare in the past. I used to teach A Midsummer Night's Dream, and that was a really difficult plot to get my 8th graders at the time to really wrap their minds around, because of the characters. There are a lot of characters, first of all, as with all Shakespearean plays, but the love, not even triangle, the love square going on there was a little complicated for them to get their minds around. So I would actually use the kids as, I'd call them up and have them kind of stand in as those characters and talk about how, this spell does this and this spell does this, and move the students around and use them as props.
Another one you could do is, if you're teaching the Gettysburg Address, the day before you actually begin your study of the Gettysburg Address, just to sort of hook students in a day early, is to give a speech of your own. So you want to take some time to write it out. And in my case, I might call it the Oxford Address, since our location is in Oxford, Alabama. And you could start it out with 22 hours and 80 minutes from now. That's close enough to the same time the next day. And proceed into what would be the really lofty and probably pretty cheesy rhetoric about the hallowed titles of the classroom floor, consecrated by alumni and teachers of years past, whose contributions began a remarkable work in transforming lives that's yet unfinished. And of course, you could feel free to end it with your classroom of the people, by the people, for the people, not perishing from the school, or something like that.
And a couple of really crazy ones, at least crazy to me, is I was thinking about how I used to teach Flowers for Algernon, which, involves a mouse. I'm terrified of mice, but you could bring one in. Bring him in a maze. Let the kids time him, right? They would never forget that. Or if you're teaching or getting ready to teach Fahrenheit 451 or The Book Thief, take them outside and burn a book in front of them and talk to them about the importance of books, if your administrator will let you. Or just stand in front of the room and tear a book up. I've actually torn up an old book before that was missing some pages and used it as my bulletin board paper, and the kids went crazy. They're like, "What are you doing? You can't tear up a book." So it's a very engaging thing to tear up a book in front of students who've always been told that they're supposed to respect those. So there are just so many different ways that you can bring these hooks into the ELA classroom, into the social studies classroom, into any classroom, and to get the students engaged. It just takes some time. It takes some creativity, a little bit of effort, and knowing your kids.
I love that book one. It reminds me of Dead Poets Society and Robin Williams' character of the students all standing up on their desks, I think, and tearing up the pages of their books. I may be making two scenes one there, but I love that, tearing the pages of the book out, and the way that the principal looks with a terrifying scowl on his face at that style of teaching.
Right, and I actually thought about that scene with him standing on the desk whenever I was reading through the hooks, and one of them was kind of, where in the room can you, I think it's the shark hook, where in the room can you best deliver this? And I thought, on top of a desk, just like Robin Williams. So that's funny that we both made that Dead Poet Society connection.
I was just perusing YouTube recently and looking at all of the videos with Dave on them, and just really amazed at the types of things he did. And I came across one who was very cynical of the pirate mentality. Mm-hmm. And this person was just like, well, college isn't going to be like that. I had some really appealing, I don't know if flamboyant is the correct word, but very fun college professors. And I had other college professors too. But I think this also works in college. And you are not sacrificing content to include some fun things in a classroom. And that's what this fellow was trying to say. It was basically, well, we need to teach the kids to deal with whatever type of teaching that they have, and to know that it's life is not all going to be just fun and games and entertainment. And I just thought that, if I were watching or listening to two different teachers, and if I would appreciate being in one, it would be the one who is making things fun, teaching me that the things that I want to do in life are going to be things that I enjoy, and to enjoy the things that I want to do, and so I have to disagree with anybody who's cynical of that pirate teaching mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'd be like saying, why are you having pajama day in kindergarten? They're not going to be able to do that in middle school. I mean, it's a progression. And as long as our students have the skills that they need whenever they leave high school to go into college and be successful, then why can't we have some fun with them? Why don't college professors have some fun with them, as you said?
And even if the college professor doesn't, I think that at this point in their lives, what we are trying to teach is find some internal passion that gets you through the things that aren't always the most exciting things for you to do. Yeah, we realize Shakespeare may not be like that, the single most exciting thing that a student will ever do in his or her life. But if we can teach them how to be passionate and connect to something with Shakespeare or Poe or Bradbury or any of these that we've given in our examples, then we've helped them out, because no matter how dry or how colorful a certain instructional activity could be or learning task could be, if they can find an internal passion that was built in them by some teacher like you or me, then they're going to make it through and they'll be just fine.
Right.
So it's time for hashtag
the struggle.
And this week's hashtag the struggle is...
Well, Cade, I got to tell you, I don't feel like I'm struggling a whole lot. We're on fall break this week.
Short segment today, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to make y'all jealous if you're not on fall break, but Cade and I are actually chilling at the school right now with our kids in the next room because students are at home or off on vacation. So.
Went to the park today, got to get in a run, and the kids got to go to the dentist. Cha-ching.
Cha-ching. I went to hiking yesterday, had a good time. So struggle's not very real this week.
Yeah, there's a few things to do. Planning for the upcoming weeks, but they can at least wait till Friday or Saturday, right, Michelle?
Yeah, procrastinate on that until Sunday night.
Nah, just kidding. But it's going to be a fun week for us, and we hope that wherever you are, you also are finding something enjoyable, even if you are in school right now, that you have that pirate mentality.
Yeah, especially if you're in school right now.
That's right.
So thanks so much for listening, guys. I know if you've stuck in this long, it's been a long one, but I think it's been worth it.
All right. See you guys next time.
Thanks so much for listening to Episode 8, Pirate Pedagogy. Thanks again to Dave Burgess for being with us. Don't forget to stop by acrossthehallpodcast.com for the show notes and join the Across the Hall conversation on Twitter at #XTheHall. And follow us at Across the Hall, where the O is a 0. We'd love it if you could also leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.